I think some of these advantages of his, I believe, were underplayed, and underplayed in part because of the typical everybody I know voted for McGovern dynamic. And I, again, there's some good news, bad news. I think you could take the positive of if they run a fairly sane, fairly capable politician, they're in a much better spot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But the bad news part is this. This is the bad news. If we're buying or selling their future as they lick their wounds, losing the keep of Twitter, I think, mattered tremendously. Losing it to Musk.
I was dismissive, but maybe you're right. I've been very dismissive of Twitter mattering still, but maybe it does.
I'm fascinated by this on so many levels. And this is almost a meta commentary on the whole thing, pardon the pun, that Musk, it is actually highly questionable and potentially a problem that somebody in charge of the sense-making meeting waters of media, of journalism, is an active partisan for one side. That is actually something that I think is worthy of questioning at the very least, but you don't even see it because journalists don't even do it, because at some level they all know that they beat back any suggestion that was a problem before he bought the platform, and basically told conservatives, well, then buy your own Twitter or build your own Twitter. And it happened. And now there's no real response because they never stake out a position that this should be a neutral, nonpartisan meeting ground. And now it's being used to benefit the other side. To what degree can be argued, but it is. And Musk went all in for one side. And we can even have an argument or a conversation about whether it's better that he's overt about it versus the old regime that pretended to be neutral but clearly was not. And he is just absolutely altering the Overton window, and I believe presenting the Democratic Party with problems. I think he's opening up discussions that were not part of the mainstream, that were longstanding practices of that party, and giving it exposure. And now not only do you have questions about what you're doing today, but you've got questions about, well, why doesn't this party favor voter ID? You know, what is with that? And that's something that conservatives said for a while, but now it's getting elevated on the X platform, and it's being discussed on Joe Rogan. And it's things like this that I wonder, is this just going to be a huge issue for them as they lick their wounds and try to recalibrate that their once reliable consensus-making platform has been stolen by the enemy and is not only preventing them from cohering in a way, because they used to be able to just cohere in real time, but is also elevating the salience of arguments against them. That's a long-winded whatever.
No, right.
You can
Is
take
Twitter,
it right.
Does Twitter kick it? Does Twitter kick anti-democratic arguments or Democrat skeptical arguments up to sort of into the podcast world, which has a very big audience? Like something starts on Twitter, then it's on Rogan. I think it's a good question. Honestly, it's an ecosystem that I'm not as well versed in as I probably should. I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, and I'm still on Twitter, but it's just, honestly, I'm so much more into Substack now, and Twitter just doesn't benefit me at all personally. I just don't engage with it much, but I think also that could lead to blind spots and kind of not understanding its new appeal, because I do think it's interesting. The Democrats had someone who had instincts in this direction in understanding some of this, and his name was Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan when he was running for president in 2020, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez attacked him and threatened to unendorse him. I think there is a fascinating dynamic now. I think Bernie's too old to really fight this out, but a sort of, as I think this through in real time, like kind of a left divide that I could see growing between the AOC wing, which went very hard for Kamala. AOC was all over Pennsylvania for Kamala, just a nonstop surrogate. Bernie, who really barely did anything beyond a sort of paper endorsement, just clearly had no interest in her. This divergence, because the old sort of, there were two left views of Rogan and this podcast world. One is don't engage, they're all racist. The other is do engage, that's where voters are. Bernie's instincts were to go there, and he did. Joe Rogan actually endorses Bernie in 2020. He endorses Trump in 2024. In some ways, that is an encapsulation of kind of what happened. If you think about it, I saw something on Twitter or X, whatever, where there was some discussion. Someone was like, the left needs its own Joe Rogan, and someone replied, they had it. Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie. So it was kind of there. It did the alternative, sort of, for lack of a better word, alternative media did not have to be such a right coded thing. If we remember, Chapo and sort of the dirtbag left, but it's really become a right wing thing, a Trump thing, certainly.
I'll respond to that too, where it's just, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers, he's so MAGA pilled, right wing, disgusting. And I go, yeah, he seemed to be the most liberal quarterback a very short time ago.
He was.
BLM supporting atheist, crunchy, out of Cal,
right,
Aaron
who just
Rodgers.
Loves drugs and space aliens and stuff. And that's something actually Matt Iglesias, of all people, writes about this. And I don't always agree with Matt, but I think Matt does have an interesting Substack. And something he's said a lot that I think is true, and it's a problem for Democrats, is the weird voter is completely on the right now. And that wasn't true. As you remember, 9/11 conspiracy theories were never right-left coded. Leftists were as much into it. You go back to the 20th century, you pick JFK, you pick anything, aliens, whatever, who built the pyramids. It was not like a left-right thing. And also alternative medicine, right? Anti-vax, go your own way on stuff. I mean, that was a hippie thing, right? I mean, being anti-vax 10 years ago doesn't mean you're like a Republican. It just means you're sort of alternative health type person, I mean, so even like RFK to Trump, right? It's this whole, the Democrats have this attitude that we don't want these people anymore. The problem is there's a lot of these people. They're not like a mass coalition, but there's a lot of people who are vax skeptical, who like alternative things in medicines, who kind of believe some kind of funky things and drift in different places and just don't line up, right? And to win elections, those people. Some of them have to vote for you. Like some of them do, right? And the Democrats chase them out completely.
Trump. Okay, so this is not a comment on Trump is wonderful or he's going to fulfill all his promises. Outside of a disastrous debate, I think he ran a hell of a campaign, while much of the legacy media was not crediting him on the basis of strategy because they didn't want it to be true. And one of those great strategic maneuvers was getting RFK to join him and getting RFK off the ballot, which just swings whatever amount of people.
And I'll say I didn't write about it much, but I think I personally underestimated it. Like it wasn't something I promoted and said, oh, this is a good move. Or like to me, I just okay, RFK endorsed Trump, whatever. But you're right. I think in retrospect, very canny move to pull him into your camp, because it was not a fait accompli. There's an alternative universe where RFK is running in the Democratic primary. Democrats make overtures to him and sort of try to bring him into the fold. But the Democrats have become such a COVID hawk party, they could not let themselves do that, even though there was no reason like a vaccine mandate had to be a left-wing thing. Like that's why I was against vaccine mandates, because I believe in civil liberties and employment rights. I'm pro-labor. It didn't have to be that way, but it became that way. And once it became that way, yes, I think Trump saw an opportunity. I think his people did. And to their credit, they completely brought him into the fold, whatever that was worth. It was worth something. It wasn't worth, millions and millions and millions of votes, but it was the right thing to do strategically, and it worked.